Hello everyone, I'm Oscar Cartagena and I'm the CEO and founder of Augmented Experiences, Multiversica and the Multiversica Academy. I'm here to talk to you about polymathic learning and the future of immersive education. So let me get myself out of the way first and we can get right on with it. Okay, so to begin this journey, first we must travel back in time about 200 years back to the Industrial Revolution and how it impacted education, right? So the Industrial Revolution came late 1700s, early 1800s, and it affected everyone in the planet, right? It affected both the East and the West. So it crucially affected education because it basically obligated industries to start creating new professionals that could work in factories as specialized labor. So that brought a lot of changes and a lot of standardization to the educational process. That being said, it also added obviously standardized evaluations and started creating schools in the sense of different areas of knowledge, and it became very, very specialized. So I think we can all agree that today's education is very, very specialized, and the things that are promoted is to be even more specialized, right? So having said that and understanding that around 200 years this process of changing education started, because before that we had a very broad range of polymathic professionals or people that knew how to do a lot of different stuff in different areas. So this is very important to understand what is a polymath, right? A polymath is a person that has many different skills in different areas and that also um, helps or promotes those areas of knowledge, right? Obviously, the most known polymath on earth is Leonardo da Vinci and his Vitruvian Man, also known as the Renaissance Man, right? And this is before the Industrial Revolution came, right? So now that we know this, we can travel back in time to today's era, and we have that the traditional generalist education is flawed. As I mentioned before, we have a lot of issues giving this hyper governance of very specialized and very hyper specific professionals. So some of the flaws that the traditional generalist system has is that it has a diffuse approach that results in superficial learning. So this prevents students from gaining deep mastery in critical areas because they are so busy trying to learn about so many different areas at the same time that you seldom have the time to specialize, right? To understand something with mastery. Out of context and outdated content that is not aligned with current market or industry realities. This is something that we see around the world, is that we have an educational system and an educational curriculum that is not entirely up to date. We have so many things going on with technology, obviously with XR development, also AI, and how these two technologies are being part of the educational process, which education in itself does not have the tools to deal with this level of uncertainty and flexibility, since the whole educational system is based on rigidity, right? It has to be like little flexible so everyone can learn the same pace at the same time, the same things. So we have also an imbalance between the conceptual and the practical. So this results in low level knowledge transfer in practice. So the things that the young adults are learning or studying are not put into practice. So they became strictly theoretical. So the whole educational system as we know it today is a system that is based on the consumption of information and remembering that information, right? Not using it per se. So you get rewarded in university or higher education because you know a lot of things that are in books, but you don't necessarily have ever put that into practice, right? And then we have a very common issue that is the mastery of lower taxonomic levels in Bloom's taxonomy, right? So, such as remembering and understanding, without promoting the other levels, which is analysis, synthesis, evaluation, skills, and creation, limit very much the decision making process. So, what's going on today is that a very high percentage of schools and universities around the world um, can barely work on the first basic levels of Bloom's taxonomy, right? Which is remembering, understanding, applying, and analyzing in the best case scenario. So this mastery of lower levels is impeding us from moving forward up this pyramid, which is evaluating and creating. So how do we solve this issue? So me and my partner Antonio La Rocha, we kind of met in the middle ground um, between the academia and not the academia, you might say, and then split in the middle. We met and we began talking about how we can fix this. This happened about 5 years ago. How we can solve this issue? How can we help between my technology knowledge and his academic and being a teacher knowledge from experience? So we started talking about technology and the aspects of technology, especially immersive technologies. And obviously today we're talking about AI as well. But it all started with XR technology. And how can XR, giving its own ethos of existing, of being an experiential experience, can change or better upgrade the educational system if it's put in the right place and the right time. So we derived a bunch of conclusions from these discussions, and we got to the point where technology by itself is not the solution. We can all agree on that. We need new narratives that are required for us to be able to solve this problem from different approaches, right? We have to see this from different perspectives so we can see what the problem is and how to fix it. So one of the possible solutions that we saw is that by applying scientific and academic criteria specialized in immersive teaching and learning processes, we can help this whole process of upgrading education. So, what do teachers and institutions need? They need a solid reference to where to land on and be able to work on towards that within the educational framework. So, then we thought, why is it important to use an integrative model in immersive education? The word model here is very, very crucial because it is the key to aligning the potential of emerging technologies with the current requirements of active and personalized education. That's where we're headed now. That's where we are today, and that's where we're headed in the future, towards more active and personalized education through adaptive learning and lifelong learning. So this creates a holistic approach that allows adapting learning experiences to diverse contexts to generate a higher level of student engagement. So then we came with the solution of creating the Multiversica model. So the Multiversica model is an agile and integrative pedagogical model which combines the balance of 5 key nodes for the creation of immersive spaces for inclusive and safe educational experiences, which are obviously implemented in an immersive learning environment. But we have a lot of thought given behind the idea of how can we create this as a systematic approach that's ordered in steps to obtain a result. So how do we approach this? We made the model that is based on 5 critical nodes, right? The technology node, the pedagogical node, the socio-emotional node, the security node, and above all, the integration of all those nodes, which is the integrated immersive architecture. So when we think about this whole model, we need to understand that it's a human-centric, um, human-in-the-loop approach where all the things that we are developing or creating are towards the end of having that end user have a better experience in learning. And this requires not only using the right technology at the right time, but also implementing the technology at the right moment within the educational curriculum. So when we think about technology, for example, as a node, we need to understand then what are the multiple technologies like XR or AI that can be used for pedagogical purposes. So then we need to understand when to use that technology in the right time. What's the right approach? So it's technology at the service of experiences of interaction, hybridization of knowledge. When we think about not only online but also offline experiences that require this social convergence, right? So when we think about the pedagogical node, we're talking about the adaptation of immersive experiences to the educational model of the institution. I was just talking about that, how we can adapt the model to the current curriculum, and how the idea of the model is to be a support system for whatever the institution is doing at the moment that requires either immersive or emerging tech. We also have the socio-emotional node, which is crucial because it talks about the adaptive spaces for interaction and socialization. This is thinking about not only neurotypical people, but also neurodivergents, where they can have different experiences and different levels of engagement with the experience and their peers. So that's why it's crucial to have an etiquette or rules of coexistence within those spaces. So those are just a few of the rules that you need to take into account where you're creating immersive learning experience, where you have to take into account how the user is feeling, and the maybe things that that user could have before going into experience that could affect the outcome. The security node is based a lot on people, right? On the end user. How do we protect the end user? How do we protect his data or its data? And above all, thinking how we manage information about the user, sensible information, biometric information in the future, and then we think about how do we cover the cybersecurity of the infrastructure, right? Then we have the last node, which is the integration, our harmonic, holistic integration of all the nodes, which is the metaversal architecture that has a formative purpose or an immersive learning experience, and it includes the design of the spaces that have a pedagogical purpose. So when you think about pedagogical purpose, then you immediately understand that this is not something that is yay or nay, like white or black. It's not binary. It's about using technology in the right places at the right time. So this just solved part of the issue. This is the immersive education part of it. But then we thought about, how do we fix the whole education system? I mean, the whole education system is flawed and broken. We can all agree on that. And we need to sort of recover that curiousness and that creativity that we used to have before the Industrial Revolution. And with that in mind, we started developing a concept about creating the academy. So we could teach teachers and train trainers about the model itself. And it quickly turned into something different. And then we ended up creating what we call the focused polymathic learning methodology. This ensures that the content architecture is contextual, relevant, meaningful within the immersive environment. This is achieved through a four-layer design that transforms any content into systemic, relevant, practical, and integrative learning experience. So what's really cool about this is that we are solving a problem how to approach information, not only from a contextual standpoint, but also as a mission that you have to achieve something. So when you look at this process from an academia standpoint, the user or the student comes in with a certain task that he wants to achieve, and this would be our fourth layer, which is the in layer, right? It's the end goal of that user. But then we have to take into account different layers, right? So we have the first layer, which is the panoramic layer or the contextual layer, which is a wide view of the context of the problem, right? So you have to understand the culture and realities that surround and shape the problem to be solved from its complexity and breadth or width. So this gives you basically an understanding of what's going on around the problem itself you're trying to fix, so you can understand the effects it has on its environment. Then you have the second layer, which is understanding of fundamental concepts. These are all the key concepts related to the problem to be solved its origins, and its consequences. And this connects to the third layer, which is the in focus. We have this little model that's in-out focus. So the in focus is deliberate practice, right? Use guided repetition and detailed correction to solve the problem. You have to ensure that technical, practical, and theoretical integrity are achieved through this process, because then you have the fourth layer, which is the out focus, which is a contextual application. Transfer the developed skill to complex scenarios, combine the acquired skills with others, and form a reflective, integrative approach where you not only understand the problem itself, but you're also understanding the context of the problem and the effect your solution has on that given context. So with that, we have the convergence of the model and methodology. So together, the model and the methodology create a perfect duo for crafting immersive, contextual, and transferable educational experiences. This approach is rooted in a holistic perspective, as I mentioned earlier, ensuring the learning is not only comprehensive, but also deeply engaging and relevant. So this key concept of being relevant in its context, it's a very important part of how we're trying to educate today. So with all that being said, this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this. My email's right there. You can contact me anytime. And thank you so much. That is all.